Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word. And for the final time in 2022, to a race reaction stream. That is, of course, for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Where has this year gone? Where did that race go? That absolutely flew by for me. I don't know about anybody else. Hope you're all well in chat. Good to see you all this afternoon. We'll call it a little bit earlier than we usually do for the European ones because the race was ever so slightly earlier as well. So, yeah, but I don't know what to say about that race. I thoroughly enjoyed it, to be honest. I wasn't expecting to because it's Abu Dhabi, but there was some good fighting to the end. Seb, 6/10 away from giving Aston Martin that 6th place in the standings. I mean, not Vettel at all. Perez versus Leclerc coming together close at the end of that final lap. I enjoyed that. I know a few people won't, but I thought it was pretty decent. We will go through the order as we always do, fly through it as quickly as we can today. There's a few bits to say about a few people, but not a huge amount about a few others. Please do drop a like on the stream as well before we get going too much, and don't forget to subscribe as well. I'm a little bit all over the place because that was a bit of an emotion ending to that one, but it was always going to be. It was always going to be, wasn't it? So let's say a very good afternoon to Stuart. I've just said that race flew by. This season's flown by. Can you quite believe that we're, first of all, nearly coming towards the end of November, but also the season's over again?
Every year, I can never quite bring myself to think, I can't believe we've come to this point again. And yet, at the same time, the beginning seems so far away. It feels like a different world, a different championship where Ferrari were about to dominate. It's been a long one, and yet I've blinked and it's now over, and now we're looking towards 2023. Amazing, really.
It is. I mean, you think back to those early races. I mean, we'll probably do this over the winter properly, but you think back to those early races. There was a point, wasn't there, where either Max Verstappen or Christian Horner said that the championship wasn't happening this year, and then he's bogged off and won it by about a season. I think was it about 7 wins clear or something at the top. I think they said on Sky, or close to. I mean, that's what a turnaround. Just unreal. I just don't know what to say about this season because it's felt good, but it's been dominant from Red Bull, and I think that's what we'll kick off today with Red Bull domination at the front. I don't know what to say about Max Verstappen. If I'm being honest, Stuart, there's not much really. Is there? Got off the line, I think initially pretty level with Sergio Perez. They both got about as good a start as each other, kept the lead into turn 1, and that was basically it, wasn't it? Pitted end of lap 20 for the hards, and then just kind of cruised to the end, looked after them and did the one-stopper and made it work. And I wasn't expecting a one-stopper today. I thought it'd be seen 2, but he made it work and never really looked back. Bit of a boring review there, but that's basically what happened.
I mean, we didn't really see him, did we? After the first few laps, he just, he went off into the lead, and we weren't really that bothered with him. Although actually, for a lot of the race, he wasn't miles in front. Like when we're sort of approaching the end of the first stints, whether you're doing one stop or 2 stop, he was like a few seconds ahead of Perez, and Perez was a few seconds ahead of, I think, Leclerc at the time. And the gaps were quite mildly staggered. So it seemed like there could be something happening, but actually, Verstappen just kind of does what Verstappen did. Didn't really matter what strategy he was on. He just took it to the end faster than anyone else. I don't think he was really pushing that hard. I think he was just driving the laps he needed to stay ahead of everyone else, as he's done several times this year, and really just kind of underlining the year he's had, really, hasn't he? For a 15th win of the year.
15 wins.
And a medal.
Yeah. I felt like Martin Brundle took a little bit, but not a dig, but made a joke of that in commentary when he said that, of course, they can get replicas of the trophies if they want them. So I feel like that's, that was the sprint thing, was the medal, but now we've got it for the real race as well. But yeah, I mean, 15 wins, that's maybe really what the headline should be for Verstappen today. 15 Grand Prix victories in one season. Yes, more races than we used to have, but 13 seemed insane when Vettel did it, when Michael Schumacher did it, for example. But 15, I never thought that'd be possible for him. And is that 17 for the season for Red Bull out of 22 as well? Because Checo won Monaco and Singapore, didn't he?
That's the one. Yeah. 17. Pretty hefty.
I mean, Nick and chat just asking the question. That would be 15 wins out of 22 is a 68% success rate. Is that the highest percentage win of all time? That's one to dig into, maybe for a winter stream or something. But that's insane, isn't it? It's
yeah, I think the McLaren one is still of
Senna Prost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when they only missed one out, that's still going to be the highest one, but still pretty dominant.
It's up there, isn't it, as one of the highest ones, that's for sure. But yeah, domination from Verstappen today. Kind of, they kept making the point on Sky to people. Did that kind of sum up your season? They said to Hamilton and to others, and it sort of sums up Verstappen and Red Bull's season, didn't it? They sort of disappeared. I think looked on for the 1-2. We'll come on to Perez as well. We're talking Red Bull. Looked on for the 1-2, but we're kind of forced into pitting by Ferrari. Ferrari have taken 22 races to do it, but they finally got strategy right. So that's great for next season. So yeah, I mean, Ferrari calling Red Bull's bluff. Perez came in, made a second pit stop that it kind of turns out maybe he didn't need to make. That's with hindsight, I guess, but he was losing time to Leclerc, so maybe the tyres weren't going to last. On lap 33, made his second pit stop. Came out 18 seconds, just over 18 seconds behind Leclerc. 8.4 seconds with 10 laps to go and gets it down to 1.3. So a little bit gutted for Checo that he couldn't get that second place. I'm going to be honest. I said it last week. I've said it to people. I said it to you in DM, Stuart. I don't care who finishes second. Congratulations, you're first of the losers. But that's the reality of it. You don't get anything for second place except maybe a slightly bigger trophy at the end of season awards, and you get to come on before the driver in third place on the stage. That's about all it is. But good for drivers, for pride, isn't it, that Leclerc picked Perez? So a bit gutted he couldn't do that, Checo, because I think he's had a good season. 2 wins, got his first pole. I think was it his first pole this year as well, possibly. Might be wrong.
Oh yeah, possibly.
Somebody will correct me, I'm sure. Yeah, just a bit. Do you think? I guess the question is then: do you think he needed to make that second stop?
I think he probably did, and I think that was sown early when he took an earlier pit stop for his first stop. He stopped on lap 15, Leclerc stopped on lap 21, Verstappen on lap 20. So he kind of already gave himself less of an option to take that second stop. He would have had to take those hards, 6 laps longer. It could have cost him, vital performance towards the end of the race. So it's really hard to say, and I think maybe they'll talk about it in their debrief when they talk about what was on the table there. But Leclerc definitely, when speaking to the press, said about how they dummied them into taking that pit stop, and I think they probably would have been better off at least attempting. As we've said many times, track position is one of the most important things you can have, even in this era where it's easier to overtake and take advantage. But it was a close run thing, and to be honest, going into this race, I kind of like both races equally. They're on equal points. I didn't really mind. I didn't have a stake in either way who was going to win. But if you invested in that, it was kind of exciting. Equal points, and it all kind of like closed up with different strategies on the final few laps, and one more lap maybe, and Perez might have been able to nab it. So that was pretty exciting, really. I'm kind of happy Leclerc got it because I think he had a good season, and I think he needs to salvage something, and he had one more win, so maybe slightly more deserving overall. And I think Perez had, I was going to say a more inconsistent season, but then Leclerc's made more mistakes. So it's that. I mean, this is the kind of ebbing and flowing of the balance between them that's meant they've been so close by the end, I guess.
Yeah, nothing really between them in the end, was there? And then you made a good point there, actually, just back to my point about not caring. If you're a fan of Leclerc or Perez, then you do care, don't you? Because, like you say, you're invested in that driver. You want them to beat as many drivers as they can. But looking at it from my point of view, the constructors is what matters when the drivers' championship is wrapped up, not really the other positions in the drivers. But of course, it matters to a lot of people. Just on that thing on percentages, by the way, Dell says Ascari 75%, Schumacher 72.2%, and Clark 70% are all ahead of Verstappen at 68%. So, I mean, that's not bad company, to be fair, is it? Ascari, Schumacher, and Clark. Yeah, we'll do that another day. We'll do that. That's a history chat, that one. But yeah, I think whoever finished second today, I wouldn't have been begrudging of that, if that makes sense. You just made the perfect point there. The way it's ebbed and flowed this season, they've both made mistakes. They've both won races. They've both had great drives, poor drives, inconsistency. So it kind of feels right that it was between them two. And it doesn't really matter, does it? But good for Leclerc, good for a confidence boost as well. And especially when you look back to the start of the season, I mean, did you think we'd be looking at Abu Dhabi and trying to work out whether Leclerc could pinch second in the standings when he was it 40 odd points clear of Max Verstappen at one stage in the championship? I thought I'd nailed it with my season predictions, the way Ferrari came out of the traps, but it didn't really work out. So yeah, second seems fair, but not really what I was expecting at the start of the year at all, especially after those first couple of races.
I mean, it's hard to imagine that this same season, Verstappen himself had said it's unwinnable. Ferrari are too far ahead. We can't catch them. Considering how after 4 or 5 races, they just completely turned that on its head and walked all over Ferrari. Really impressive from them. Going to be interesting to see if Red Bull can take it and continue this next year. I don't want to get too much into next year chat, I guess, but I kind of predict we're probably going to have a little bit of a more unsettled 2023, and it might sort of reflect the flow from 2011 to 2012 if you went from dominance to a bit more unpredictable.
Yeah, hopefully. Just one thing I'll check I do want to bring up, actually, I've just put it in my note, or had it in my notes. 1.3 behind Leclerc over the line. Did get caught in a little bit of traffic, but then everyone had traffic to deal with, so that's not really fair to blame that. But did also have a little scrap with our Seb Vettel down at turn 6, went in too deep, and then Seb was back through, so that could have cost him some time. So when you look at Checo's race, the traffic, the battling with Sebastian Vettel, needed to get that move done quickly, you can see where that's kind of gone wrong, because without that and just a clear run to Leclerc, he gets him before the end of the race. I think that's what I would read into that. It doesn't matter though, does it? Because he didn't. In the end, he was third. Charles Leclerc, second place today. Again, I've said it already. Ferrari finally got some strategy right. Great call to dummy, as you say as well. Stuart said in the interview with Sky that they dummied him into the pit stop. So great stuff from Ferrari and great stuff from Leclerc. Pitted at the end of lap 21, which was, I think, a bit later, wasn't it? About 6 laps later than the Red Bulls did, or at least Perez. So managed to eke them out and lead the race for a little bit. Stayed out when Perez pitted, as I said. Ferrari forcing Red Bull's hand. Maybe a bit of squeaky bum time towards the end as he's looking in his mirror and that Red Bull's getting closer and closer, but held on, took second place. We won't say too much more on Leclerc's season because we've kind of touched on that anyway with how things were at the start versus now, but I think well-deserved second place. I'm not going to, again, begrudge him that, but good race from Leclerc today, good from Ferrari, and really, again, without getting too much into next year, we really need them to take what they've learned today in strategy and apply that to next season, because maybe then we'll get a really good title fight between them and Red Bull, and who knows, even Mercedes as well. Carlos Sainz in a Ferrari, by the way. What we got? We'll do Sainz properly in a second. Oh, no, we'll do it now. We'll do Ferrari altogether. Why not? So 14.7 seconds behind Perez. Did make the second pit stop as well. Probably the biggest moment of his race was the incident at turn 6 with Lewis Hamilton, squeezing Hamilton off track after quite a late move, actually, it felt like. Gave him a squeeze. Hamilton took to the runoff, bounced over the sausage curb. Stuart decided no investigation. Personally, I think that's about fair. It's not like Sainz totally slammed him off the track, is it? It's a late move. I think Hamilton as well maybe paying a bit too much attention to Leclerc and not enough on Sainz. No penalty there. Hamilton was told to get the position back, did, and that was kind of it for Sainz. But I think good race all round from Ferrari, second and fourth today.
Yeah, I think they should be happy with that. And very, very much like you say, they need to kind of consolidate everything they've learned and take it forward, because I think we as viewers and the sport itself needs a consistent, competitive Ferrari. They know how to make fast cars most of the time. They've just sort of fallen apart in the actual deployment and racing of them. So hopefully they'll be in the mix, and we'll get on to Mercedes and hopefully them too. And next year could be very interesting indeed. But this is reflective of kind of Ferrari at their best. I'm saying this, they didn't win or anything, but in theory, this is how they are. And I kind of read that incident with Hamilton the same. I did kind of cringe a little bit that we had once, as last year, this sort of little bit of a scuffle into the chicane at turn 6, Hamilton having to take across the thing and sort of gaining or not losing a position, and but that was all handled well. I think he did get that position back after a while. It was one of those instances I think that could have kind of gone either way. Could have been a racing incident, like Sainz was a little bit late, Hamilton was a little bit shoved off, but Hamilton then did kind of manage to not have to yield a position by going over or cutting the chicane effectively. So it was sort of a 6 of one, half a dozen the other way. So I was quite happy with how it all got resolved. I prefer to have things resolved on track than having a bunch of penalties hanging over everybody. So yeah, and I think Ferrari can be happy with this and go forward, and they've got that second in the championship, in both championships, I guess. But yeah, a lot of learning, I think, after this. A lot of kind of figuring out what they need to be and do as a team to prepare themselves better in races, because they've fallen flat on their faces too often.
Yeah, too many mistakes this year. I'm not saying without mistakes Ferrari would have been right in there, but it certainly would have been closer than it was. Red Bull were just so dominant this year. But I will, just on Sainz as well, a little cheeky smile with his cheeky radio when he's sat there. Hamilton goes across the chicane and he sits on his team radio and goes, he did the same to Verstappen last year. I was like, oh, Carlos, don't open that can of worms, mate. Leave that one alone. But yeah, I think Ferrari had a pretty good day today. Sainz never really able to challenge for the podium. The pace wasn't really there. Seemed off the pace early on. Mercedes seemed to have him, but that kind of all turned around quite quickly with Hamilton apparently having some problems and Sainz finding speed, so that will change. The hard tyre seemed to work well on the Ferrari as well, didn't it, today? So maybe that's something they can learn as well for next season. I'm just going to read this super chat from Rixis. Thank you so much, mate, for your super chat and for your support this season. Said Max did it to Checo, didn't he? Opens popcorn. Well, you could say that, but you'd be kind of wrong, because Checo was 3 points behind in this race. So even if Max had got out of his way in Brazil, it would have made no difference. Leclerc would still have been second. So that kind of closes that chapter quite nicely as well, a little bit, in my opinion. Because you can't look back and say, well, that cost Checo today. And Perez didn't appear to have the pace to challenge Max. I didn't hear any team radio, Stuart, unless you heard something that said that he had to stay behind Verstappen. I know he was told to look after his tyres, but that's just pretty standard F1 now. So that sort of shuts Brazil off a little bit, doesn't it? And removes that issue for Red Bull, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, Brazil just sort of left a bit of a funny taste in people's mouths and opened up fights that I think maybe people were sort of ready to have anyway. But yeah, I think Max clearly showed himself to be the fastest of the two today, and didn't, and sort of stayed out of any requirement to yield position, especially once Red Bull dropped him. So yeah, not
much to add on that, not at all. Yeah, I'm going to move on to Mercedes. Pictures won't line up today. Because I quite enjoyed the race, but it wasn't like we had tons happening. So it's not like we had lots of collisions and spins and mixed up strategies. It was all very much one or two stop, and people were stuck in DRS trains. So we will fly through it today, and then we can do a few questions and that towards the end. George Russell was P5 today. Bit of a mixed race. I thought he had a good race, apart from one major issue, really, and that was his 5-second penalty in the pits for an unsafe release. But obviously I'm not blaming George for that, by the way. I'm not saying he had a bad race because of that, but that really tainted Mercedes' day on George's side of the garage with that 5-second penalty, but did well to come back to fifth. Obviously helped with his teammate retirement, 10.9 seconds behind Sainz in the end. Pitted end of lap 15 for the hards. Slow right rear, which cost him 5.2 seconds. Unsafe release, which then cost him another 5 seconds for the penalty. And I would argue second stop was also a little bit slow, because he had the 5-second penalty and his stop overall was 8.8. So that's 3.8 seconds for a stop. So he's lost time in the pits, not just because of his unsafe release, but around the stops as well. But overall, pretty good from George today. Pretty good season as well. Understatement, beating his team. What did they say? Is he only the third driver or second driver to beat Lewis? Third driver, because Nico Rosberg won the championship, Sean. Come on. Third driver to beat Lewis Hamilton in the same team. I mean, that's well done, George. That's a great, solid race. Good points on the board. Got a win in Brazil and just beating Lewis Hamilton in the championship. I mean, whatever the reasons, that's not bad for a first season in a new team, is it?
Yeah, I think he should be very happy with that. There are a number of reasons for the way things sort of panned out, which I'll get to in a sec. But I think Mercedes Well, the pit stop thing is interesting. I think it's a thing that happened not a lot with Mercedes necessarily, but with teams in general. I think we tend to see unsafe releases more often when they've made a mistake, and so they're just so eager to get the driver going again that's when they will forget to look about anything going on in the pit lane. I think we'll often see like a stuck rear wheel or something, and then they'll immediately like pull the driver out into someone else. So I think maybe people need to think about that a little bit more. And Mercedes pit stops in general, we've known for years that the Mercedes tend to be focused on accuracy rather than speed. So they'll often sacrifice, a half second, maybe a second, just to make sure, everything's on right. And you'll rarely see like a terrible mistake from Mercedes pit stop. But again, they're nothing like Red Bull in like absolutely getting the driver out in 2 seconds. And to be fair to Red Bull have made very few errors in the pit stops this year. So I think now that Mercedes aren't in a dominant position, I think they really need to focus on making up that second or half a second in the pit stops, because actually that's much more costly now that they don't have the pace advantage in hand. And yeah, I'm really chuffed for George. He's come into this team, managed to do well, beat Hamilton. I think we need to remember that Hamilton was doing a lot of development work on that car and trying a lot of experimental setups during the season that kind of cost him performance and made him struggle a little bit more. So I think that comes into play when we're I'm not trying to downplay George having a really good season in that team with the car they had, but I know Hamilton was sort of for the first half of the season really kind of driving with a bit of a hand behind his back for some of the time. But I think he'll also be the first to say that George had a great one and a great win as well. I mean, I wasn't chatting to you last week, but to overtake Verstappen in the sprint and then take that forward and win the race, I think that was really impressive. So good season for them. I think I'll be happy with that, and I'm sure he'll be hoping they can push that car forward into a more competitive position next year across the whole season.
Yeah, I mean, only just on Brazil, only 1.5 or so seconds between him and Hamilton for much of that final stint, but a fairly comfortable win in the end for George. So fantastic for him, and I can't really disagree with anything you've said there. A little wry smile as you do what all of us creators do, and I'm not taking anything away from George because I need to cover this because someone's going to accuse me of something. We're all guilty of it, so yeah, it's silly we have to, but there you go. Thank you so much to Bill Asher for your very generous super chat. Thank you so much, mate. It says Mercedes didn't have it for Ferrari today, and Ironic Merc had the DNF. Wish Checo had better pace. Thanks for the great content and looking forward to the next chapter. Thank you so much, Bill, for that one. And yeah, not quite. Bill is the one, by the way, Stuart, that we keep referencing, who said, I think it was around the summer break, maybe just after or before, I can't remember, Bill, you'll have to remind me in chat, who said that he thought Mercedes would pip Ferrari to second in the Constructors, and we all kind of laughed a little bit at him and thought, don't be silly, they're nowhere, and they weren't a million miles away. So brave prediction, Bill, and I applaud you for that. And I'm sorry for you that didn't come off, because we would have all looked really silly then. So thank you so much, mate, for your super chat. And thank you as well to Rick. This says controversy didn't work out. Great season. Thank you, F1 Word and friends. You'll get to it, but today is all about Danker Seb. We will get there, Rick. Thank you so much for your super chats. Let's do Lewis Hamilton as well then. A bit more eventful for him today. We had the incident with Carlos Sainz on that first lap. We've both sort of agreed on that. I've not seen many disagreeing in chat, if anybody, that was about right. The only thing I'm not sure of is if the stewards asked Hamilton to give the place back or whether the team did. They said we've been asked to. That would say to me the stewards have said something, which would go, as commentary pointed out, against what they said earlier in the season about how they were just going to let drivers and teams decide themselves and they wouldn't say anything, and if they didn't swap and they felt it was a penalty, they'd give one. But I wonder if, with the controversy we had, or the complaints from Pierre Gasly around it, I wonder if the stewards have, or the FIA have changed their stance a little bit, just to avoid, because if you remember Gasly with Stroll, that incident there, he was annoyed that he'd not been told to give the place back, and he just got on with his race and felt it was all fine. So I wonder if the stewards have just decided to say, let's intervene now. If we think they need to give it back, we give them a lap to do it. If they don't, we slap them with a penalty. Maybe. Stuart's learning.
I think that. I mean, as you were saying that, I had completely forgotten that the stewards or the FIA had made that rule about, we're just going to leave it up to you, and if you get it wrong, we're going to give you a penalty. But the impression I got from watching it, and maybe they'll confirm one way or the other, was that the stewards had suggested to them to give the place back. Yeah, I mean, it's quite unclear now that they've taken away the sort of radio thing and reduced the ability they're allowed to communicate with the stewards, like how much communication is going on between the teams and stewards. My impression was that the stewards had recommended that, which was why as soon as Hamilton gave the position back, they were like, no further whatever the wording is, no further action on that. But I think either way, Mercedes probably knew that's what they needed to do to Hamilton. I think it was easier to do that and then get on with their race than sort of have a 5-second penalty probably hanging over them, I think. And I think that made sense to me. Although Lewis Hamilton then had, which again, like covering with Brazil, he had that a reasonable amount of damage from that sort of early incident that's kind of hung over him for the race. So we not really know how fast he could have gone. And that's kind of speaks to his whole season really a bit. He's just been a bit hampered, I think, and probably a little bit frustrated. But he definitely, he wasn't too far behind Russell at any point in this race. He was struggling quite a lot on the radio, but actually when you sort of watch the timing screen, he was only a couple of seconds behind Russell at any point until they sort of offset their pit stop, and then he retired. So I think I'd be frustrated, but not too unhappy with that, apart from the retirement, obviously. But I think, again, I think as a whole for the year, I know they didn't start where they wanted to be, but I think it seems like they're very happy with the work they've been able to do together to get themselves to where they are now. I think if you told them beginning of the season this is where they would be, they'd be very happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite an odd race anyway, wasn't it, for Hamilton? Like I said a moment ago about Sainz, he seemed to have the measure of Sainz, and then that pace fell away. He said that he had some floor damage over the radio. The team haven't confirmed that as I sit here. I've not got the information in front of me. I've not seen it since we went live, so I'll keep an eye out for it. But so they've not said anything there. And then he's sort of plodding along quite nicely. Not happy to be left on the one stop, but looking like he's probably on for P5. And then suddenly his car starts to slow down with a suspected hydraulic issue, which would fit with the fact that he was struggling with his gears, and then pulls over in the pits, and it's game over, really. Quite odd. I think Mercedes are going not pretty terribly versus where they were last week, but on a track that was never really going to suit them this season. I think they were doing okay. They weren't ever threatening Ferrari for that second in the constructors in the end. But yeah, I can't disagree with anything you've said there. I think that's all fair. No investigations on the incident with Sainz because that all resolved itself in the end. Just disappointing. And I've written the stat down. I think I heard it right in commentary. Is that Mercedes' first mechanical DNF of 2022?
That's what they said, yeah, which is astonishing, really. I know they had issues with the car, but yeah, they seem to have been. Well, we knew from early on they were pretty robust, and that was part of the reason that they were not, for a lot of the season, that far behind the two teams ahead. I think George Russell was like second in the championship for a little while,
yeah,
and Mercedes I think were as well, and I think they were only achieving that by just being pretty robust, particularly with that engine. But yeah, quite incredible, really. A big shame for them that's when it all went a bit belly up for them. But Hamilton didn't really lose anything. Nothing was up for grabs, particularly for him at this point. So again, if you're going to fail, it may as well be in the last race when nothing's up for grabs, right?
Yeah, that's true. And of course, just very quickly worth mentioning as well is record for the season, or his career record of having won a race in every season in F1 since his debut. That's over. Not massively surprising given how bad things have gone this season for Mercedes for the most part. But if you'd have said to me at the start of the season, first of all, Mercedes will win one race this year, I wouldn't have believed you. If you'd have said that Russell would be the one to get it and not Hamilton, again, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have thought if anybody was going to do it, it was Hamilton, but it's not worked out this year. So onwards and upwards for Mercedes. McLaren 6th and 9th, Norris in 6th, Ricciardo in 9th. Ricciardo involved in a late scrap with Sebastian Vettel for that final, ninth place, which would have given Aston Martin another place in the Constructors. We'll get to that later. Didn't see a huge amount of Ricciardo outside of that, if I'm being honest. I may have missed something, but pitted end of lap 19 for Haas is what I have here. And Lando Norris, we talk about summing up drivers' seasons. Today, for me, summed up Norris's season in that he's got a really good result with P6, but for the most part, it was relatively lonely. That's how it's. I know he has like Ocon right behind him towards the end and was involved in a few things, but we didn't see a huge amount of him. And whilst he was involved in things, it wasn't like it was anything overly dramatic. Just got on with his race, delivered the result, delivered the fastest lap as well for a nice little bonus point. And that was it for Norris today.
Yeah, and what else can you say? I mean, at least he wasn't horrendously sick this time around.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, funny old season for Norris, and I think again, I mean, this race as well. I think this was a fairly solid race for him, and he's had quite a lot of fairly solid races this year. But I think he would have wanted a little bit more, but not from this race. I think getting sixth. I don't know how much you were watching the Sky After Show while you're preparing this. This stream, but they spoke to him after the race and they were like, best of the rest. And he's like, I really hate hearing that. I'm so tired of hearing that phrase. So he's definitely hungry for more now, because I think he's been doing like best of the rest style performances for quite a few seasons now. And I think this is very reminiscent of like when we were getting towards the end of the season last year, at a time when we started talking that there's only so many people who could be fighting at the front, but there are like quite a lot of people who are very ready to be fighting at the front. And I think Norris is one of those people, and it's going to have to be a fair bit of luck and good work from the team to get him there. But yeah, we didn't see too much of him, but apart from when like Russell pulled out in front of him. But I thought he had a good race really. And again, McLaren in fifth. Yeah,
I forgot what I was going to say. Oh my god, that thought literally, I felt it fall out of my head. What was I going to say? It was something on Lando Norris, obviously. Before we got onto Daniel Ricciardo, I'm going to try and give myself a second to remember. No, we'll come back to it.
The little bullet points of what I said, if any of that sparked your memory.
I can't even remember what it was now. It's oh no, there it is. It's come. So I joked in my preview about how Lando Norris has carried that team this season, which he really has in terms of point scoring. Mm-hmm. And he, as you've said, a lot of the time this season has been either best of the rest or in that best of the rest fight. If that championship, that Constructors' Championship, I do not believe absolutely correctly or accurately shows the pace and the reliability of McLaren versus Alpine. If Ricciardo had been on old Ricciardo form, or Norris had had a teammate that could get anywhere near him this season, I think McLaren would have cruised to P4 in the end. Because what did Norris pick up? I mean, what was his points tally come the end of the season? 122 points versus Ocon on 92 and Alonso on 81. If he'd have had an Alonso or an Ocon as a consistent teammate, I think McLaren would have romped home with that. I really do.
Yeah, it didn't need too much. Yeah, I mean, Daniel Ricciardo only got 37 points compared to Norris's 122. I mean, yeah, compared to Norris's 122, which is almost the gap between Norris and Ricciardo is almost Ocon's entire points haul.
Yeah.
It's only a couple, which is, it's very frustrating, isn't it? That, I mean, I guess you want to talk about Ricciardo next, but, and as we go into next year, it's very hard to know if the rookie that's going to be joining Lando Norris will be able to sort of get up to speed and support Lando Norris's points haul in that way.
Yeah, a couple of people in chat saying if Alpine had better reliability, they would have been clearing fourth. But I'm talking about driver performance, not team performance. Alpine was shocking with reliability this year, specifically on one car. But I'm talking about driver performance. If Ricciardo had been anywhere near Norris's level this season, they would have taken full advantage of Alpine's reliability and cruised to that 4th place. So, but on Ricciardo, if I don't go straight on a negative with Ricciardo, I'm not as emotional about him leaving as a lot of people seem to be. Not because I don't like him, because I do like him. I'm not quite sure how you can't really. He's a cheery guy. He's done very well in Formula One, achieved quite a lot with his wins and his time at Red Bull in particular, his win at Monza with McLaren. But I think it's because he's not leaving. It sounds like he's going to be with Red Bull next year as a 3rd driver. And I think that with driver contracts ending for some teams at the end of next year, I think he's a driver that will be in high demand if he can get himself together. I think he needs a break, and I think it's the right thing for him, but I do expect that he will. If he doesn't come back, he will at least be in the conversation for the next 15 years, like Nico Hulkenberg seems to have been since he left Formula One. And that's kind of what... So I feel like Ricciardo will be back. So I'm kind of gutted we won't see him racing next season, but I'm glad he's going for him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and he's spoken a lot about the time he wants to take for himself to kind of recuperate mentally and sort of figure himself out and stuff like that. And he's taken a very sort of proactive step in just, making some space for himself, which I think will be good. I hope it's the right decision for him to be able to kind of rebuild and return. And I kind of have the same. It's hard to know. It's one of those. It's a weird feeling of not knowing if this is going to be Daniel Ricciardo's last race or whether he'll come back or not. Like he definitely wants to come back. For him, it's not the end, but a lot of that's out of his hands, and he's kind of in I guess a Nico Hulkenberg kind of a situation where maybe he'll come back, maybe he'll be a dab hand for someone to like rehire when they have a space for him, or maybe not. Maybe rookies will start coming through and they'll be driving well, and there won't be a need for Daniel Ricciardo as far as any team boss is concerned. So this could be a quiet little goodbye for him. And one day we realize that was his last race and he never came back. But I think you're right. I think he'll be a presence. He says he's going to be at quite a few of the races, and I think he's got a good attitude that he'll be picked up by some of the media outlets, whichever, ones want to have him as a pundit and things. So he'll definitely be around whether or not he's in a race car or not. And I'm a big Daniel Ricciardo fan. I always have been, because I think he's great. I really enjoyed his racing when he was at his prime, and I really enjoy his personality and his attitude and the positivity he brings to things. But for me, it was kind of similar to Michael Schumacher retiring for the 2nd time. Like the first time, it was like a big deal and sort of similar to when Seb's leaving today and things like that. And but because it was his final few years were a bit more muted, it was like, okay, yeah, this is it feels right that he's going and fine and whatever. And it's not. He's sort of been a bit more anonymous. So, which is a shame, really, because I think people forget how good Daniel Ricciardo was when he was great, and it's a shame that just going to McLaren has kind of stunted all of that and kind of people have either forgotten or they're kind of new to the sport and never really appreciated that. So yeah, it's a little bit kind of sad how muted it's been, but I'm hoping we see him again. I hope he gets a chance to kind of show himself. I think we probably won't see him as a championship contender, but you never know. You never know what with this sport.
Yeah, and a couple of fair points in chat as well. Brad says Daniel is pressure on Checo plus Nick de Vries. I'd also argue you could throw Tsunoda in there as well. Having somebody like Daniel Ricciardo as your reserve at Red Bull, if you've got I don't want to preempt terrible seasons for them, but if you've got a Tsunoda or a de Vries or a Checo who's probably less Checo, but a Checo who's not performing, then you've got a Daniel Ricciardo there who potentially can hop into one of those seats if you need them to. I think I can't see them dropping Checo mid-season or anything, but maybe, if Tsunoda gets a bit crash happy like he did in his first season, or it doesn't work out for de Vries, you've got somebody there who's ready-made to hop in and help that team out. So that's a very good point. Also, Jack says, Red Bull need to better their image. It's in the mud right now. Danny Rick does that in spades. Daniel Ricciardo is great for PR. So that's a very good point as well. But I will miss him. I'm with you. I think he's had a difficult couple of years, but I think he's still got something, and I still think he has been a far better, because recency bias is a thing in all sport, not just Formula One. In all sports, recency bias is a big thing, and people seem to have forgotten what he achieved before this couple of poor seasons. Poor seasons, by the way, in which he's also won a race. I will point that one out. So, 3 pole positions, 8 wins, 32 podiums, over 1,300 points, 16 fastest laps. Beat Sebastian Vettel in his first season in that Red Bull. I know Vettel, the Ferrari thing, rumours there that he was underperforming for clauses in contracts. Don't know how true that is. So it's not like he's been a terrible driver all these years in F1. It's just been a rough couple of years. Some will argue he should never have left Red Bull. Funnily enough, he's ended up back there anyway, so maybe there's an answer to that. But I'm going to miss Danny Ric, personality, and I'm always going to remember, if he never comes back to Formula One, if it never happens, I will always remember probably my favourite Daniel Ricciardo moment, believe it or not, that move on Valtteri Bottas in China in 2018. At turn whatever it was, 4 or 5.
Oh yeah,
that was a lovely move. That was the one that the one that coined the phrase "lick the stamp and send it" or something like that.
It was, yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable move. And that's the kind of move you can't make against a rookie. You're going to get away with it with Bottas, but that was fantastic. So thanks, Daniel Ricciardo, is what I'm saying there. And hopefully, we're going to see him around, aren't we? He'll be on TV and in the paddock and that, and on lots of the B-roll that Red Bull put out next season. But hopefully we'll see him back in the future. Thank you to Charles Edward Cheese. Good evening, mate. Thank you for your super chat. Very generous as always. And thank you for your support this season. It's been unbelievable. You're so kind. Thank you so much. Says, pop the champagne. Sad days for Checo. Hopefully Max has some competition from Merc next year. The only ones that can get him are George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Facts. Shot o'clock. He's not on the shots again, is he? Says, P.S. Thanks to the hosts and mods for another great year of reactions. What are you all going to do over the break and any holidays? Well, first of all, again, Charles, thank you so much for coming along to these streams. Thank you so much for your support. It means a hell of a lot. I can't put it into words. I'm rubbish at putting things into words, which is funny, really, because that's kind of my job. But I'm terrible at it. But all I can keep saying is thank you. I'll be honest, mate, I'm not sure we'll get to 500 likes tonight because we've only got 570 here. I'll say only. We've got 570 people here listening to us talk nonsense on a Sunday afternoon. But if you could try and drop a like, or please do drop a like, for Charles Edward Cheese. If everybody watching does it, we can do it. Let's see if we can get there for him as high as possible. If not, we'll try and do it after the stream is finished. And to answer your question, what are we going to do over the break? I don't know about you, Stuart, but I was told about this place the other day that I've never... This is a little off topic, but I've never heard of it. It's called... where is it? Outside. I think I'm going to head outside. I don't know what it's like out there. I don't know what happens. I don't know what it costs, if it costs anything. But yeah, that's my plan for for the winter. Leaving my office.
Seems fake, but all right.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's real.
I'll have to Google this, find out what that's all about. Because what have we got? Like 2 weeks till the season starts again?
Yeah, something like. I tell you what, it's we've got all of December, all of February, all of January. Sorry, then we've got February with all the car launches and testing, and it'll be here before you know it. So, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm looking forward to a proper off season. We've not had that for a couple of years since the COVID restart, if you want to call it that. So it'll be nice to have a proper winter. Basically, to be honest, Charles, spend a bit of time with family. I'm still going to get content out. There'll be my end of season roundups and that on the channel through December. I want to do a video on Sebastian Vettel as well at some point in the next week or so. So yeah, there'll still be content, but I will be getting out a bit more, spend some time with family before 24 races next season, which is very exciting. Thank you very much again, Charles, for your super chat. Where did we get to? We've just done McLaren, haven't we? Said goodbye to Danny Ric for now. Esteban Ocon in P8 and Fernando Alonso DNF. Not P8, sorry, P7 and Fernando Alonso in the end DNFing. Ocon, really lovely fight early on with Sebastian Vettel. I love Ocon's aggression. Today, I really wanted him to be nice and chill, and he wasn't too bad up against Sebastian Vettel. I've got pitted end of lap 14, and again, on lap 41, that's some lovely symmetry there. 14 and 41. Fernando Alonso pitted end of lap 39. Did a lovely double overtake on Tsunoda and Bottas at turns 6 and 7 at one point, although Tsunoda did get him back at turn 9. But unfortunately, pitted to retire at the end of lap 27 with a suspected water leak. Now, first point, I don't think anyone's surprised by Fernando Alonso having a mechanical issue because that's all he seems to get in that team this season, or it feels that way anyway. But I think his race was kind of compromised by the team a little bit. In strategy, he ended up in traffic, didn't he, after his pit stop, having already pleaded with the team to think of changing up strategy, because I think he wanted to undercut Vettel and Ocon, but the team pitted Ocon first, and Alonso was left out, and that cost him big time, and he fell behind a number of drivers, didn't he? And that really... Fernando Alonso can overtake, so he may well have come back, but that really did compromise his race at that point.
Yeah, it did. I think this is a very much... I mean, this is becoming cliche already, and we've only been talking like 45 minutes, but this race sort of summing up a lot of drivers' season. Like, he was very racy, very aggressive, making up positions and getting stuck in, and then strategy kind of put him out in a weird place, and then his car died. So I feel like how many times we sort of had that kind of race from Alonso. But to be honest, I don't think he would have been too sad about it. It seemed like he was reaching the point where he was sort of ready to leave, very much, wasn't he? And kind of accepting fate as it fell with the Alpine team. I mean, you kind of feel like he'll be back. He always comes back. He'll be in a Renault again when he's 45, or an Alpine, or whatever they're called at that point. I think he's been at that team like so many times under so many different names. But yeah, that's quite, for as frustrating as Alonso the man can be, he is a lot of fun to watch, isn't he, on track? And I hope we get to see more of that next year. And great, I really enjoyed watching Ocon as well. Some good racing there, and I love watching him scrap with Seb and some of the cars around him. I think kind of a bit like Ferrari, maybe. I feel like there was a lot more in that Alpine team than is reflected in the score sheet, I think. And I think that's another team that's going to be going back to the sort of factory and the drawing board. I mean, they probably already have. I mean, because they're already designing next year's car and thinking about next season. But how to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen again, how to make sure they're not losing as many points as they have. And I think that's kind of the story of their season, is just how many points they've lost. I think Alonso thinks he lost about 70 points. Might be a little bit of an overestimation, but I don't think he's that far off. I think that, there's a lot of points gone down the drain in that team. I don't think so many points that they would have got third.
No.
So they probably ended up where they would have been anyway. So, but still, if they're kind of moving towards next year, they need that. They need momentum and need to know that they're a solid team, and they're going to have a new driver in there as well. So interesting. And I have previously poo-pooed Alonso coming back to the sport at the age he is and the kind of very strange attitude he has. But you know what? He's still very much got it, and with Aston Martin in the Ascension, I have to say I'm still excited to see him next year, despite me often being a bit frustrated about old people still being in F1 when there are so many new people waiting to get in. I am still excited about Fernando Alonso, I have to say.
I say about old people, Sebastian Vettel's retired and he's younger than both of us. What are we doing? Yeah, no. I was always the same on Alonso. I've said it a million times, but I'm Michael Schumacher fanboy. Alonso was the first one to stop him winning titles in 2005, so he was the enemy. But as a driver, I've always respected him. He's a phenomenal driver. And I still think if you put everyone in equal cars, he's one of the best out there. Absolutely is. So to kind of counter your point on the age thing, if you're good enough, the age doesn't matter, does it? It's all about the stopwatch. And he's entertaining as well. He's brilliant fun. Just gutted today that he couldn't get to the end, because just retirement after retirement after retirement. And also it would have been lovely. And it's kind of why I'm a bit gutted about Hamilton's retirement too. Would have been nice to have seen Hamilton and Alonso flanking Vettel, Verstappen in there as well to the grid. Would have been really nice, like we saw a few years ago with Seb and Hamilton doing that for Alonso. Would have been really, really nice, but it didn't work out in the end. I had a point on Alpine. If I remember it, I'll come back to it, but it's not happening. Where are we up to? We're up to Aston Martin. Lance Stroll at P8. Sebastian Vettel, don't get me started. Sebastian Vettel in P10. Stroll, a really good result. but a result I didn't see coming for a little while. He'd kind of pitted earlier, which allowed him to try and undercut Alonso and Vettel and Ocon. He did manage to do that on Alonso, came back through nice and racy towards the end after his second pit stop on the medium tyre, which will have helped him with pace a little bit. Got past his teammate, got past Ricciardo. Really nice results. Aston Martin, though, with Sebastian Vettel in 8th place, were... I mean, that's not... Yeah, I'm looking around driver. There you go, yeah. Sorry, Sebastian Vettel and Aston Martin were 0.6 of a second away from P6 in the Constructors' Championship. That's going to smart a little bit, isn't it? That's going to be... And I think at one point, didn't Vettel pass Ricciardo, then get repassed by him? So they were on for that at one stage today, late on. So such a shame. Great to see Seb racing right to the end, though. I've got lots on his race. Great early battle with Ocon. Was P4 through the stops. Not his best run of the year. Of course, did lead at Cota for a little while. Ran long, pitted at the end of lap 25 for the hard tyre. 4.1 second stop, which cost him time. Now looking at it, cost him 9th potentially. It doesn't always work out like that. I know it doesn't, but that was a right rear issue. Drops into 19th place. Tried the one stop. Didn't look like it was working, and I suppose you could argue it didn't, but he still had good pace at the end despite having those tyres on for quite a while. So one of those days that 10th place doesn't feel like an amazing send-off for Sebastian Vettel, a 4-time world champion, but actually the race itself, getting to see him battle with Ocon and a little bit with Alonso and Ricciardo, it was a nice way for him to sign off. And I'm pleased he was top 10. And I mean, brace yourself for a shock here, everybody. He also got driver of the day. I mean, I could have told you that on Thursday that he was going to get driver of the day, but yeah, good race from Seb, I think, for a final Grand Prix. P10, and like I say, Stroll, great stuff, P8. Just to show, I'm kind of... I would have liked to have seen them get P6 Aston with how this second half of the year has gone for them. Certainly since the last few races, really picked up the pace.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the delightful shocks for me this season, is because Aston Martin was so in the doldrums, and it was so frustrating to see, especially once you knew that Vettel was retiring, and it's just like, this is no way for Sebastian Vettel to leave the sport. It just kind of... I mean, there was that period of time when he was just screaming, and he was screaming with frustration in qualifying because he kept getting knocked out in Q1. And to be able to turn that around, find some pace, and be able to sort of, I don't know how long it's been, the basically the last third of the year, just fight for points and better qualifying positions and really get stuck in there. It's been a joy to see, and I'm really glad Vettel has been able to perform and battle. And we've seen some of his old self, really. That was, he never, right up to this race, you saw him fighting and not really giving up, despite it being like lower positions or lower points positions, and even with Sergio Perez, So I'm glad he got this race. It's a shame they put him on the wrong strategy. Really, we did see. I mean, when he was going to the one stop, it did seem like the wrong move. It was not recommended by Pirelli, but we did see as the race unfolded that a one stop could work. And I think he was really undone in just how long they made him stay out for the first stint, because those mediums just lost so much time. Whereas if we look at, Verstappen and Leclerc, who did the one stop, they went 20, 21 laps, and Vettel went 25 laps in a car that I think pretty easily, arguably, is not as good at managing its tires as the top two cars. So that's what cost him. And again, he had to go on to use hards rather than fresh hards. It was, I think, going on to sticking with the two stop with the people around him and fighting with the people he was already competitive against would have got him, the extra points Aston Martin needed to jump Alfa Romeo, which I think they deserved, to be honest. Again, you can say they don't deserve it because they didn't get the points, but it was very, very close, wasn't it? And I don't know if you've seen what Vettel's dad had to say about it, but he didn't mince words at all. It was quite funny. I'm really glad to see Vettel's dad as well. And as you said with Stroll, yeah, another good race from him, good result. He was on a better strategy, but I think we need to see more races like this from Stroll. I think we've said a couple of times that there's a good racer in Stroll, and we need to see it every race, I think.
Yeah.
And as he's, I was going to say moving into a team leader role, but he I mean, he probably isn't he? Because Alonso's
No.
going there, and it's a bit.
I can't imagine he's going to settle for that, Fernando.
No, I got myself confused. There are so many people who are like their effective team leader is sort of leaving their team next year, and they're going to have to step up. But I don't think Stroll is. I mean, Stroll's going to have to assert himself at some point, right? I know he can't be fired because his dad owns the team, but he's gonna have to do something. And he is fast. He is fast but he needs to be fast all the time.
What did Seb's dad say? Try to find it.
Hang on, I'll dig it out if you cover for like 10 seconds.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, obviously the wider story today is that he's retiring. I think they made the great point at Sky that this doesn't feel like he's coming back. He might. You never know. I didn't think Fernando will be back, but there you go. And he's still, 34, I think, Seb. So, it's not like he can't come back. Still plenty of time for him, but it does feel like this is final, and he is leaving, and he has left. And I'm just going to be quite frank. I'm going to miss the guy so much. I was so invested in Sebastian Vettel for so many years. Watching those 4 titles right from his debut even and his first practice session in, I think it was Turkey, wasn't it, in 2006, and I think his second FP2 session, which was in Turkey as well, I think he topped the times. So it was quite clear that he had pace and I'm going to do this in a proper video, go through his career in like a summary and give some thoughts on him. But I've watched so much of Seb. I've loved the guy. I think he's brilliant. I don't understand the people that keep telling me he was a horrible, petulant brat at one point. I did not see that on my side, but maybe there's some bias there. I don't know. I think he's a much better driver. And I think he's one of those that will, and there's a few that will take a few years. I think people will look back in 5, 10, whatever years and see Sebastian Vettel as the fantastic driver he was and the asset he was to Formula One and how much better he was than he was given credit for. And I'm just going to miss him. That's all I'm going to keep saying, Stuart. I think we've had several Sebs, brilliant racer, world champion, race winner. Obviously, you're not going to win a world championship these days without winning races, but also the guy we've had for the last couple of years. I just think he's brilliant. And that's kind of that, really. That's my mini tribute to him because that'll be done in the video proper. But yeah, it won't be the same without him.
It won't. It won't. And I think you summed it up. I don't have much to add except that the things you said are kind of glad. The reasons I'm glad that he had a good end to his season where he was allowed to kind of show that side of himself in a car that was tricky to perform in, rather than sort of because it had reached a point where like people, there are people maybe always welcome the new fans, but people who are a little bit newer to F1 who just thought he was sort of a bit overrated and, past it and all of that kind of thing, who maybe hadn't seen just how skillful a racer he was and how determined and how good he was at driving across the whole weekend. I'm glad we got to see a bit more of that alongside this other side of him that's developed, in his later years where he's sort of become a bit of a father figure, much more considered, much thought a lot about his values and who he is as a person as well as a racer. And I think that's been really lovely to see. I've got the Norbert Vettel quote as well, which I'll read the transcription of, which was that race, a strategic disaster. They just lost 12 million. Ha ha ha. Seb was just too slow on the old tires, and then Stroll came behind with fresh tires. Stroll needed to wait for Seb to pass Ricciardo and then overtake. Then they'd have one more point. Now they're just losers. I could do a better strategy on my tablet. But I'm very proud and emotional. I think Seb leaves a big footprint, only smaller than Michael. I hope I can somehow get a paddock pass in return sometimes. Greetings to all, especially my mum. There you go.
He won't be returning with Aston Martin, will he? Tell us what you really feel, Norbert. Yeah, well, no, the strategy was not great today. I think we can all agree on that one. It wasn't a great strategy, but my counter to that in Aston Martin's defense, well, not in Aston Martin's defense, but in a way to kind of back up what he's saying longer term, maybe if Aston had been a bit quicker out of the traps in the season, we wouldn't be having the conversation. They'd have been clear in 6th place. But hey, can't get over that. He doesn't seem the type. Everyone on Sky going, oh, he's lovely. He's so nice. You sit down, you chat to him. He's such a lovely guy. Then he's like, screw you guys. Middle finger and walks out. Well, he's just a legend now, isn't he? So there you go. But yeah. I'll read a couple of comments from chat on Sebastian Vettel just before we roll on. Like I said, I'm going to do a video on it properly in the next week or so. So I'll not say too much now. A couple of people pointing out multi-21. That doesn't bother me at all. It's racing. I have no issue with number one driver ignoring team orders. I can't. It makes me a hypocrite because of the Michael Schumacher thing. But I'll read his quote because I feel like it's a nice time to do it. I was racing. I was faster. I passed him. I won. My other favourite quote, of course, is... Well, I can't remember the quote now. I did write it down. I've lost it. It's all about ping pong. Are we racing or ping pong? He's got some great quotes, as our Seb, definitely. So I don't think Seb changed at all. He was a fully mature driver in 2008, says Nick. The 9-race win in a row, I hope never gets broken, says Martin. That was a phenomenal... I thought Verstappen would do it this year, actually, but didn't work out in the end. Corn will never forgive Multi-21. Brad says, I want Vettel to take some time away for his family's sake, then come back at a high-up director of some kind. I wouldn't mind him as FIA president in the future, to be honest. I think he'd sort a lot out. So I'll have a look for that one, but I haven't seen it, so we'll see how we go. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'll leave it at that for Seb because I don't want to get all emotion, and I'll do it all in the video, like I say. But thank you, Seb. Danke, Seb. I think we can all agree on that one. What a career. Pretty decent end. Just a shame that the team didn't get the strategy right today. This is a race reaction, so I will roll on from that. But I'll miss him. End of. That's my review of Sebastian Vettel's entire career. I'll miss him. Yuki Tsunoda, 11th place in the Alpha Tauri. Pierre Gasly, 14th. We'll fly through these because I have not got a lot at all. Tsunoda was kind of involved at the back end of that. Alonso, Ocon, Vettel, Stroll scrap, wasn't he, for a little while. Ended up 5.4 seconds behind Vettel, but 22 seconds up the road from Zhou Guanyu. So pretty quiet race in the end for Yuki Tsunoda. Managed to undercut Fernando Alonso with an earlier stop on lap 14 for the hard zone. Actually pitted late on, not late on, but lap 38 for the softs, which was a surprise on lap 38. So maybe what was his pace on the final lap? 32.2. No, it wasn't horrendous, really. Zhou was a 32.5, Albon a 33.8. 32.8 for Gasly, so he wasn't miles off the pace come the end, so that's quite surprising the softs held on. So well done to Yuki for that. Didn't manage to get the points needed. They needed 2, possibly 3 to overtake Haas in the constructors. That didn't happen. Pierre Gasly, again, I've only got his pit stop, so I'm going to have to go to the press release for Pierre because I don't remember seeing an awful lot of him. Quite a quiet day for Alpha Tauri. So Yuki said, I did the best I could out there today, so I have to be pleased with that. Unfortunately, the tyre just dropped off at the end and I couldn't keep up the pace. That makes me stupid because I was reading that completely wrong then. Been a tough year for the team, but on the positive side, I've learned a lot, especially from Pierre. Been a pleasure to work with him over the 2 years, and I want to say thanks to him for everything he's done. And Pierre Gasly said, I don't have many things to say about the race. We tried something different today, but it didn't seem to work. It was my last with Scuderia at Alpha Tauri, and sadly tonight didn't reflect our time together. And then he's got a few words, says, I will remember everything I have experienced over the years with the team. My first race in Formula One, my first podium, and of course his first win. I often forget Pierre Gasly is a race winner. I know I am a better driver today because of them, and I'm so grateful for all those achievements. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone I've worked with. They've all done a tremendous job. We've had 3 amazing podiums, and now it's time to celebrate these unforgettable memories together. Oh, that's nice. Nice quotes there from Pierre, who moves to Alpine next year. That's going to be a tasty lineup. Do you have anything at all, Stuart, on Alpha Tauri's race other than the pit stops I've just listed, as exciting as that news is?
I did enjoy that, the Tsunoda Bottas Alonso little battle that we mentioned there before. Everyone was a little bit on different parts of their strategy, and that was quite fun. I mean, in general, that sort of, I think it speaks quite a lot to the new cars we've got this year and some of the revisions of this circuit. But the sort of overtaking into the chicane and that not being enough to kind of hold off, and then having a re-overtake down to the as I think Crofty started calling at one point, the parabolica, which was exciting to see. And yeah, Tsunoda was involved in some of that. Gasly, what a strange strategy they put him on. 14 laps on the softs and then all the way to the end on a set of hards. Bizarre. But sure, as he said, they did try something different, I guess. Bit of a shame just in general. I think Gasly's had a tough year after like a couple of years of really building up his credit and talent. I think this has been a bit of a drop off for both AlphaTauri and kind of as a result of that Gasly, we haven't really seen the Gasly we got used to for a couple of years. So I hope Alpine gives him a chance to shine, and he is now completely free of Red Bull at last, which would be interesting to see. I'm really looking forward to Gasly. I think we're now at the time when it's like, if Gasly's going to step up and show himself and work his way back up to the front and scoring podiums and potentially wins again next year is really where he's going to do it. So didn't see a lot of him this year, didn't see a lot of him in this race, but I know the top Gasly is still in there.
I think he's going to a good team as well. They've got a quick engine. If they can sort the reliability out, they're looking good. They seem to be moving in the right direction. He seems to be making the move at the right time, I think. And I that's going to be tasty. Like I say, that could be a very exciting lineup, and that might set them up quite nicely next year. If we have another Alpine versus McLaren battle, Piastri's going to need to step it up pretty quickly. I think, I'm not saying he'll be under pressure straight away to deliver. I'm just saying that if they want that fourth place back off Alpine at the end of next season, if that is going to be the battle that we have, then they're going to need Piastri up to speed pretty swiftly, aren't they? Because Gasly could hop in that and disappear. He may not. Looking forward to De Vries at AlphaTauri as well next year, by the way. I'll mention that one. I keep saying De Vries because somebody keeps telling me off for it, so I keep doing it. I'm sorry. Zhou Guanyu, 12th place. Valtteri Bottas, 15th. We've sort of talked about him a little bit as we've gone through other people because they were kind of involved, weren't they, in lots of little fights, and Bottas was involved in a few scraps. But he ran super long, started on the hards before switching tyres to the mediums on a one-stopper, but never really threatening points today. 9.1 seconds off Gasly, 14 seconds Kira Schumacher, 15th place finish. Not much there for Bottas, but did seem nice and scrappy, so that's good. He got involved in some fights. And Zhou Guanyu, again, was there, pitted end of lap 14, hard tyres, end of lap 45 onto the softs, so he, a little bit longer, a little bit less time, on the softs than, I think less, or was it the same as Tsunoda? Tsunoda was lap 38, so yeah, a little bit less time than Tsunoda, but still a long way off. 22 seconds behind Tsunoda, 8/10 clear of Albon, so I'm assuming there's a pass there late on, but not much on Alfa Romeo, if I'm being honest. So sorry to the Alfa fans in chat. Unless Stuart's got anything major to add, I'll roll on.
No, not too much to add, really. I think as a whole, Alfa Romeo have kind of fallen off a little bit. Very surprised to see just what a bit of a duff weekend Bottas had in particular. Struggled in qualifying, didn't really make much headway in the race, was almost a completely different strategy to everyone else except Magnussen, I think. So yeah, just kind of odd and interesting to see what they're going to be up to next year, because I got to apologize. I keep sort of kind of taking this conversation and reflecting it forward to next year.
No,
but I think
fine.
This year we definitely saw a lot of a lot of people getting some fortunate jumps out of the gate with the new rules and having a surprise amount of performance, and then just particularly like the lower teams that maybe don't have the budget or the experience to just keep pushing as hard as some of the other teams. But your Haas and your Alphas getting some good pace early on, not being able to push that development forward and keep it going, and then getting themselves sort of overtaken and falling back later in the year. And Alfa Romeo are among that lot, and we sort of, Bottas 7.0 or whatever the hell we're up to by now, kind of we didn't get to see as much of him in the latter half, and I think this is sort of the full stop on that. So interesting to see where they are next year, but I think they'll be glad they've got Bottas on their side as they keep working on that. Yeah,
I mean, a couple of things. First of all, obviously really important that they got that 6th place in the constructors, so that's good for them. Despite a shaky end to the year, I guess you could say. They're sort of coming strong, weren't they? And then they kind of fell away again a little bit for one reason or another. But yeah, I think good. I think Jamie just said in chat that's Sauber's best finish since 2012 as well. I'll check that in a bit, but I'm sure he's right. But yeah, that's pretty solid. But one thing just before we move on to Williams, Valtteri Bottas every single time I fill these tables out for these streams, it always surprises me. He finished in the top 10. Somehow, Valtteri Bottas ended the season in the top 10, despite only scoring 3 points between Silverstone and the end of the season. What a first half of the year that was for Bottas, scoring so many. What was his result? 6th, and then a DNF, then 8th, 5th, 7th, 6th, 9th, 11th, 7th, and then just 3 points for the rest of the season. I mean, that's... Wow, well done to Valtteri Bottas for top 10 there. Again, probably showing how good that Alfa was, either in terms of its weight, managing to keep the weight low, or just the car in general at the early stage of the season. But Williams, Alex Albon pitted end of lap 12 and on the end of lap 35. Not much on there, but he says, I'm really happy with my race today, and I think with such a strong start, getting past 4 or 5 cars in those first laps, it was great. Moments in the race where we kept hitting tyre degradation point. Says we'll get to about 15 laps and then suffer a loss of performance. So forced to pit quite early, and he did pit a couple of times. Fell short in the end on worn tyres, but I think starting P19 and finishing P13 is a good job. So I think that's fair enough. That's a 6th place improvement, isn't it? And Nicholas Latifi, end of lap 14 for his stop, and then got hit by Mick Schumacher at the turn 5 hairpin, which... We'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to Mick was very sloppy from Schumacher, to be honest. But said the incident with Mick Schumacher really put us out, and then we suffered an electrical issue that forced us to retire. It's not how I wanted to end my last one, but it is what it is. I'm very grateful for 3 years of Howard Williams in Formula One, leaving the sport feeling like I wanted to achieve and accomplish more. However, it doesn't always work out like that in motorsports, which is fair enough. Did say... along the way, there's been highs and lows with many strong bonds and friendships that I'll cherish. I will just say... a couple of people quite annoyed, or not annoyed, but questioning why I didn't say more about Nicholas Latifi in my preview on Thursday. I'll put it to you, Stuart, and to you, chat. What do you want me to say? Like, what can I say about Nicholas Latifi's career? He was there, and maybe a couple of... I mean, Hungary. Was it last year with that really good result for Latifi? I think that's, great stuff for him, but for the most part, he's not really set the world alight. I know he's not had the best car, but neither did Alex Albon this season, and he still made him look worse than average, to be honest. What was it? 7th place in Hungary, then 9th in Belgium in the race that wasn't really a race. I mean, that's his best period in Formula One, and then 9th in Japan this year. They're Nicholas Latifi's season highlights or career highlights. I like the guy, lovely guy. Absolutely agree with him. Nutella is insanely delicious, but I can't get excited about his career because, again, aside from, I'm not even going to count Belgium because it was a race that never really happened. But aside from Hungary and Japan, what can I get excited about? Sorry.
Yeah, didn't set the world on fire, did he? By all accounts, a very lovely guy. He was nice to have about, but again, as we've said so often, there is a big queue of talent looking for seats, and he was there for 3 years. I mean, he could have been worse. He wasn't like an absolute disaster where we were just begging him to leave, but he was often at the back. He was often fairly anonymous. Alex Albon came into that team and kind of continued to put big shade on him in performance. Like, he wasn't slagging him off. And I think that's it, really. I think I think everyone agrees it was time for him to go and to give someone else a chance in that seat. Very interested to see Logan Sargent step up. No idea how he's going to do in that team. It's tough to race for the team at the back and prove yourself. But as we've seen, some of the drivers in that team have definitely proved themselves. I think Alex Albon, in particular, his stock has shone this year, actually. I know it's been a tricky year, but we've seen some good Alex Albon performances. Even times when he wasn't scoring points and things. I think that he did some performances that were recognizably good. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure he'll find series to race in and be successful in them. I think it's just the end of the road for F1, and probably rightly so. And I think he'd probably agree it was rightly so too.
Yeah, well, I mean, worth mentioning that as well, isn't it? That Logan Sargent got his super license points that he needed today. So congrats to him. I'm quite looking forward to seeing Logan Sargent in that car next year. Real test up against Alex Albon. Hey, Jonty says in chat, can we also discuss Nicholas Latifi being allowed to continue with a rear wing that was seriously dodgy? I know it didn't come off, but if it had, yikes. I didn't see that, Jonty.
I didn't see that. Oh,
no. If that's the case, I hope that's not going to be the fallout from the black and orange flag fiasco. I still hope that's going to be a thing. They're not just not throwing it now because, well, yeah. I'll have a look for that later. I don't know, John. I'll have a look for it later. I'll have to DM you. But if that is the case and it was a dodgy rear wing, then probably should have been called in. That, I mean, he retired anyway, didn't he, in the end? But obviously, a good few laps after the Mick Schumacher thing. So I'll keep an eye out for that one. Said it was leaning about 10 degrees to the side, said John T.
Okay.
Yeah.
Completely missed that one. My bad.
I'll have a look for a pick in a bit and see if I can find something. But we'll just round off with Haas then. Magnussen ran long for the first stint. He started on the hards as well. Ended the race in P17, 6.6 off his teammate. Hey, K-Mag, glad you were there. That's all I've got for him. And Mick Schumacher pitted at the end of lap 14 for the hards, and then again on the lap 34 for the mediums. We talked about the contact with Latifi. I mean, came in late, didn't he? A long way back, threw it in there. That gap. Latifi was quite slow through the corner, but that gap was there, but wasn't ever really there. If that makes sense, it was always gonna. Latifi's always gonna turn left into a left-hander. I know it's shocking. Total misjudgment from Mick. Tagged his rear, Latifi's rear, sent him round. They both actually, well, Latifi hit the wall, I think, didn't he? But managed to keep going. He was given a 5-second penalty for that, and that's absolutely the right decision.
Maybe that's where the wing got damaged. Yes, it's all coming together.
Here we go. Just call us Inspector Morse. There you go. All the inspectors in the world. I went with Inspector Morse. Anyway, just a little bit silly from Mick there. 5-second penalty, totally fair. Don't think many people will argue with that. Stephen says rubbish strategy from Haas. He doesn't use the word rubbish, but does say rubbish strategy from Haas there. So, anything you'd like to say on Haas, Stuart, or that incident in particular? I'm going to go try to find something on Latifi quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on the strategy there. Yeah, that incident was very clumsy. Definitely Schumacher's fault. I have to say, to my shame, before they showed the replay, when they just showed the results of them spun out, I assumed it was Latifi's fault. I thought, you're getting known for getting some silly incidents and rubbing against the walls on tracks like this, and I just assumed it's a classic Latifi's going out the way he went. But no, yeah, I mean, you can't really blame anyone but Schumacher because he wasn't even vaguely significantly alongside. He just sort of, his nose tapped his rear. And shame really, because I don't think that reflects on Nick's general driving style. I don't think it was, it cost Latifi too many positions. I'm not going to lie. But at a time when Mick Schumacher is looking to improve his stock in the eyes of teams up and down F1, which I think he has been. Like I think he's had a good bit of pace and stepping himself up and showing himself that he's still got plenty to give in F1. And it seems like I think Mercedes have recognised that. You don't want to be doing sort of clumsy moves when you're on the brink like this. That's all I really got to say on it. Clumsy, not the worst possible thing, but all a bit silly, really.
Well, I just searched on Twitter for Nicholas Latifi's rear wang, so I don't know.
Oh, goodness.
I don't know what I was expecting to find, but it wasn't that. Sorry. A little insight into Sean's weird world. I can't find a picture of Latifi, so I'll take your word on it, Jonty. I'll say what I said. Stay with what I said. Just a bit. Got to be careful, these cars. If they're falling apart, don't send them out. And it's not like you say, it's not like it was going to destroy Latifi's race, but DNF in the end for him. Before I get to driver of the day, a couple of things. First of all, thank you to Pascal for your super chat. Sorry it's taken me a few minutes to get there. Says, I'm in party mode, P6 for Sauber. I'm delighted and will enjoy a few refreshments today. Best results since 2012, and Peter Sauber was there today too. Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's cool. I like it when that happens. Like Frank Williams, when Williams won that race with Maldonado around his birthday. It was good timing there. Says, thank you, Sean, for your great streams all year. No problem, Pascal. Thank you. I love doing them. Thank you so much for your support, everybody's support, but yours as well, Pascal, and your super chats this year. Massively appreciated. And thank you as well to, is it Shantanu? Bartia says, unfortunately, the most notable thing about Latifi was that time singing about him allegedly got Dan Tickton fired. I can't remember. Oh, was that the one on the stream? Yes. No, I think I recall what you remember. Yeah. Thank you very much, Shantana. He also likes Nutella, and I'm a big fan of Nutella. I'm also a big fan of peanut butter, crunchy peanut butter. Don't know why you need to know that one. But also, before we go on to the driver, I've got to read this from Sebastian Vettel. In the press release, I won't talk about his race, but says overall it's been a big and an emotional weekend. So thank you to everyone for all the support. Seeing so many flags and so many smiling faces has been very, very special. I am sure I'm going to miss it more than I understand right now. The past 2 years have been great for me personally, so thank you for all the support, all the messages, the letters, and all the love in general. I will miss that, but it has been an absolute joy throughout my career. So thank you all again. Danke Seb. Driver of the day.
Ooh, we do that.
Oh, hang on. Wait. Oh,
that's just reminding me of something. Did you see on Ricciardo's in lap, McLaren asked him to put it into a certain setting, and it brought up a little picture of his Monza win on the dashboard for him.
Oh,
which is kind of nice.
Oh, that's nice.
While we're doing our goodbyes, I just remembered that when you were talking about his goodbye note. Anyway, carry on.
I think I'm gonna cry. No, that's genuinely lovely. What a nice little touch there. Teams do make an effort, don't they, when the drivers move on, which is nice to see. I'm sure I heard some other stories from some other stories from other drivers that are leaving teams. But driver of the day, one surname in chat. Let me know who you've got, and I will read a few out for the last time this season. Sebastian Vettel won the official driver of the day. I mean, I'm sure we'd all love to give him that one, Stuart, but based on the race, who would you go for?
It really is a tricky one, this one, isn't it? I don't want to give it to Verstappen. I don't think Verstappen did anything particularly spectacular, because I think he just managed the race with the pace that he had. It wasn't who do you give it to? I'm struggling with this one, and I have to admit I forgot to think about this ahead of time. I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna give it to Charles Leclerc, because he drove a great race. He dummied Perez. He got himself second in the championship as well as the race, and he managed a one-stop masterfully. And I think it's kind of reflective of the Charles Leclerc that we know is in there. So I'm going to give it to Charles Leclerc.
I think that's I mean, he's on my list. I mean, Verstappen I put top of my list because he went out there, started on pole, dominated the race, never under threat, managed his tyres nicely for the one-stopper, picked up the pace when he needed to. It might be the boring answer, but I think that's fair. So Max was top of my list, but Leclerc's a great shout. I also think Lando Norris today for P6 and fastest lap as well. I think he did, didn't he? Fastest lap. And I think Lance Stroll as well coming through the field. I mean, where did Stroll start?
He gained 6 places, Stroll. That's really good.
It's really good for him, but I'd have to go Verstappen just because I'm always impressed. But it's maybe not the most exciting answer, but I'm always impressed when a driver goes out and just can dominate like that one. So, but it is tough because they were all rubbish. No, they weren't. It's tough. It's tough because in some ways there wasn't when we do these streams, sometimes you can just, you're going to pick a driver because they've got that big standout drive or that moment. But everybody today, Verstappen did what Verstappen's done for big chunks of this year. Leclerc, great strategy from Ferrari, good drive from him. Perez coming back from that two-stopper, not a million miles off second. Every single driver through the field, for the most part, certainly in the top 10, just kind of had a good race, if that makes sense.
I've got a sneaking suspicion that if Alonso hadn't retired, I might have been giving it to him, because he's looking good to have a really good race and a memorable race. So we'll be looking at him a lot. But we will never know.
Yeah, I'll read some out in chat. I know we'll have a few differing views on that one. But It is tricky. I look at the order and I'm sort of like going, you all did a great job. So everyone gets driver of the day.
Interestingly, Perez came second in the official poll.
Did he?
Yeah.
Maybe for that comeback. Wait for that ambulance to disappear. It's not for me. Roden93 says Sights. Nick says Stroll. Steven says Leclerc. Dame says Stroll. Lee's gone with Lando. Brad's gone with Leclerc for driver of the day. Mr. Random says Leclerc. I've read Stevens. Ankit says Leclerc. Daniel Philpott says Tarso Marquez. That's the name I didn't expect to hear on commentary today. Jamie says Lando for fastest lap in a comfy P6. Doe says Leclerc. Kathlos says Leclerc. Bill's gone with Leclerc. Ayinkia, apologies for destroying that, says Vettel. So Vettel and Leclerc. Waldo says Leclerc. Martin's gone with Vettel. Leclerc is my favourite comment so far. I agree. Leclerc. We've read that one. Zero says... Oh no, you're in a different conversation. Sorry. I love it when it happens. Joe for holding up the Aston Martin says Pascal. Did I miss that? Pascal's an Alfa fan. Is there any bias there, Pascal? I'll let you off. Corn says Bottas. C64 says Gotifi. Will says Charles. Luca Padoa. Dan Philpott, pack it in naming older drivers. You're confusing me. Yeah, not quite so many in there today for driver of the day, but that's fine. I just end up reading the same name over and over again. But I would say, I think you've won that one, Stuart, with your pick. I think a lot of people agree it's Charles Leclerc, which I think is fair. Which I didn't mean to rhyme, but there you go. A couple of people asking about the booing of Max Verstappen. I know we all have different views on this. The booing doesn't bother me. It's all just a little bit silly. And it needs to stop. But...
weird, really. I don't know what he's done other than like, it's been a while since he's done anything, that wound people up.
I mean, maybe it's to do with last year, but Max Verstappen did nothing wrong last year in Abu Dhabi, so I don't know what the booing's about. It's just a little bit silly, but I don't know if Sky condemned it, but they're quick to do it for other drivers, but not always for Verstappen, which is maybe not a total surprise. But yeah. Not really much more to say on the booing, just all a little bit silly. That's a great photo, by the way. The fireworks at the end. They must have cost a bob or two. That was quite a moment. I thought, Christ, I hope none of them run stray. That could be terrible. But yeah, if you've got any questions in chat, please do throw them at us. We'll answer them for the next few minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up for 2022 with the reaction streams. We are going to do that one. Anything you'd like to add, Stuart, before we start taking questions? Have I missed anything... or anything you want to add about driver of the day or fireworks or Seb?
No. Well, the one thing I will say, and, this is a bit of a tired point, but it is fun. It is kind of odd coming from off Brazil where the atmosphere is incredible. The racing's amazing. And to come here for the finale, I'd still love it. This has definitely been much improved, be it the changes to the circuit, the changes to the cars. It's a lot more interesting a race than we've had. It definitely seems like, you can overtake. You're not going to get stuck behind people like Alonso was, or just everybody was. But it's in terms of the atmosphere, in terms of the excitement of the racing and all of that stuff, it's just nothing compared to Brazil. It's kind of quite funny for this race, which, the hosts are paying an absolute fortune to have it as the finale, of just seeing it directly compared with Brazil a week before. And I'd still love to have Brazil come last if that can ever be arranged. I think that's such a great send off for the sport, and it all makes us feel good, even if the championship has been wrapped up. That's my, I don't want to be a downer on it, but I do think, it's what the sport deserves.
Abu Dhabi as a race always feels to me, last year aside, when there's no title to wrap up, it always feels to me like that day at school when you could take a video in to watch and it was non-uniform day. that final day before the summer holidays or something, where everyone's sort of just there like, well, we're here because we have to be. We're contractually obliged to be here. We don't really see any point in it, but not everybody, because there were things up for grabs, but you know what I mean. And then you sit watching a film all day in class because the teacher's probably already half cut. Or that's just my school. That could just have been my school. But yeah, no, that's what Abu Dhabi reminds me of. Whereas Brazil, I agree, great atmosphere, fantastic racetrack, great race as well. I'd always say Brazil should be the finale, but You know, I'm sure there are reasons why we go to Abu Dhabi. I sure lots of bags of reasons with pound signs on is why we go to Abu Dhabi.
Millions
for the
of reasons.
Millions of reasons. I thought of something and it's gone completely out of my brain. Oh yes, I haven't done this for a while. Please do drop a like on the stream. We have got 250 nearly, 500 still here. We're trying to get to 500 for Charles Edward Cheese. I'm going to try that again in a minute. For Charles Edward Cheese, let's try and get to 500. 560 still here. If half of you can smack a like on the video, that'd be massively appreciated. Not for us, but for Charles and his amazing support this year, and for everybody who's dropped super chats and patrons as well who have supported the channel, and all those that have commented on videos and liked and subscribed. I've said at the end of the preview, I know I've had a difficult year personally. Content has been really all over the place. Get anything sorted. Hopefully we can get back to something near normality next season and be a bit more consistent. But thank you for your support this year. It's been, I can't put it into words. It's just massively appreciated. Thank you to Sujith as well for your super chat. Says Seb should have a last hurrah with AF course and win Le Mans in a Ferrari hypercar. That would be a good story. I've not seen the Ferrari hypercar. I've seen the hype around the Ferrari hypercar, but I've not seen the Ferrari hypercar yet. I'm going to extend that into a bigger question then, Sajith, which I'll throw to chat and I'll throw to Stuart as well. Do you think we'll see Seb racing somewhere in the near future, or do you think, not necessarily in F1, I think Race of Champions, that kind of thing is almost a given. I think he'll turn up to those, but do you think we might see him somewhere like Le Mans or, I don't know, WEC in general, something like that? Or do you think he's more likely to, as somebody else said earlier, take some family time and then maybe come back in some kind of management role with a team? Or I think Sky made the point, maybe replacing Helmut Marko in the future at Red Bull as an advisory and looking after the junior program, something like that.
So I think in the short term, I don't think we're going to see him do much racing, and I think if we do, we're going to see him do sort of little one-off things. Like Race of Champions is a good example, but I don't think anything that requires a lot of commitment, like even Le Mans, a lot of people do as a one-off race, but I think that also requires a lot of commitment. And I think if he's going to do anything, he might do some sort of fun, smaller one-off things. But I think he's very invested now in, one, in his family, and two, in sort of figuring out what he wants to do next. And if at the end of this year or the end of next year, I guess he's sort of like, I've got the racing bug. I want to do like a smaller series in the way that I guess Jenson Button did for a little while. I don't know if he's still doing that, but he went and did some sort of smaller series and had some fun in sort of sports cars and stuff like that. And I don't know exactly what he's going to do, but I've got the feeling long term, I think he's going to be quite interested in doing something that will be the next step up from, he's spoken a lot about how he's come to understand his platform and the power he has to affect change and to get involved in things that he really cares about. And I think he might try and figure out how to do a bit more with that now, whether it's running a foundation or getting involved in something either like environmental or in terms of changing motorsport, in converting the way motorsport works and affecting change within motorsport. So I think maybe not see him in a team management role. I think we might see him in a more like overarching sort of, if it's in motorsport, making changes within motorsport kind of thing. And maybe that means working for the FIA and working for their sort of, I don't know, sustainability, or like bringing new people through. He's definitely got a lot of things that he's interested in making changes there. And I think he knows, I think he might want to give back into the sport, knowing how much he's got from it in that regard. So that's what I suspect.
Yeah, Jonty says maybe Extreme E could be something for the future for him. Maybe giving it a go there. It would certainly align with everything he's doing, wouldn't it? Away from Formula One, it would certainly align with that quite nicely. Alex Bentley, thank you very much for your super chat. Says historic racing, maybe even classic F1 machinery. Maybe we'll see some more outings of that Williams he's got. Maybe a few more of them. Thank you very much for your super chat, Alex. But yeah, I think generally I could see him in like an advisory role somewhere at some point. I kind of, in some ways, do like the idea when Helmut Marko calls it a day of him taking over that role because of what Red Bull and Marko and that whole program did for him. It would be kind of like a nice way to tie it all up. But I'm not sure, from what we've seen of him so far this weekend and what he's been saying, I'm not sure he wants something that is as involved as that. I don't think he wants to be coming to races every weekend. I think he needs to take some time away. Maybe in the future, we'll see. But I still think maybe something in FIA presidency wouldn't be terrible. Daniel Philpott does say maybe WEC because it's only 7 to 8 races a year. Go-kart, says Adam Welsh for Seb. Well, I mean, is it Quasey J? Says Binotto out, Vettel in.
Well.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. We'll get into Ferrari's management struggles over the winter. We'll not do it today, but like I said, any questions you've got, please do throw them at us, and we will we'll answer them. Last chance to do it on these streams anyway. We'll definitely try and get live over the winter more than once, which was I think what I did last year, which was really bad. But I think last year I didn't want to go live too many times after the season. I just couldn't be dealing with the chat. Most people are decent though here at the moment, so that's all good. Said the Extreme E thing. We've talked about WEC maybe for Seb. Lucas says hope that he continues his climate activism. I think he absolutely will. Thoughts on Hulkenberg returning, says Philpott. He's the only one who gets his surname, Philpott. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So I'm really happy, as you can tell. No, I like Hulkenberg a lot. I say it every time his name comes up. I have made videos on it. I've talked about how good he is, how much I respect him. I think he's better than a lot of people give him credit for. The podium stat thing to me is just a meme because it's not like he was ever in the best car on the grid and should be scoring podiums every weekend. He just either threw it away or something threw it away when the opportunities arose. So I don't think that's a big issue. He is consistent. He's quick. It raises questions for me, not about Hulkenberg, but about Haas's ambition. Like, where are they going? And I know for a fact we've had this conversation before, Stuart, me and you, on one of these streams about Haas being one of those teams that you kind of look at and you're like, so where are you going? What exactly are you trying to do? And I feel like this is another one of those moves because, yes, Hulkenberg is a safe pair of hands. Yes, Kevin Magnussen, they see him as a safe pair of hands as well. But what's going to happen in the future? Where's your preparation for the future? I'm not saying Schumacher necessarily. I think another season for Schumacher would have been perfectly fair and perfectly fine. I know Formula One isn't fair, but I think that would have been okay. Another season for Schumacher. I think if you look at the back end of the season, he's outscored. And in fact, I think I wrote a stat down earlier. I bet I can't find it now. But it was something like, since Mick Schumacher's last retirement, which was Canada, he has outscored and outraced Kevin Magnussen. In the head-to-heads, he's beaten him, and he scored more points. So wow. I'm not really sure what more Mick could have done, aside from not ramming into Latifi today, for example. But I just think in terms of Haas as a team, would they have been better giving Mick another year and then seeing, who's coming through in Formula 2, maybe giving Drugovich an opportunity, a younger driver, alongside Magnussen? Do you know what I'm getting at? Just for the future, I don't feel like this is very long term, yet they're saying that this decision was for the short to medium term. Well, I'm not even convinced Hulkenberg's a medium term option, to be honest. I mean, he's not that old. I think he's younger than me, actually, so I'm going to shut up now.
It feels like he's been around forever, though, doesn't he? I think Schumacher got the short end of the stick here. I think he deserved another season. His first season kind of barely counts because I don't think anyone kind of fully understood how bad that car was, and I think he did a reasonable job in that 2021 car. And I said on Twitter, I think that it was sort of a bad strategy for Haas to keep kind of leaning on older drivers to keep helping develop the car and not learning how to nurture new talent and make a plan for the future. And I don't know if Haas want to be the kind of team where they can do that in a sort of, or whether that leaves them vulnerable and then like the higher teams will just pluck that talent off them as soon as they become mature. But is Haas just going to be the team where older drivers go to finish off their careers, or I don't really understand it, and I feel like if next year was Hülkenberg and Schumacher in that seat, I suspect Schumacher would be the better driver, because you can see that he's developed and he is a good driver, and I don't know how good a driver he could be, and I know he's, as a lot of people have said, he's caused an expensive amount of damage to that car, and who knows how much that costs people in the long run. But I don't know. I feel like dropping him was a bit harsh, and I think dropping him for Hülkenberg of all people is a bit strange. So I'm not a big Hülkenberg stan. I think he's fine. I think he had his shot, and I think we've seen the best of Hülkenberg. I definitely don't think we're going to see peak Hülkenberg in 2023. And I think if they were going to replace him, I don't know why they went there, other than the fact that they kind of want someone a bit older and more consistent, even if that consistency doesn't hit the highs that maybe Mick will be able to hit. I don't know. I wouldn't have done it, but then again, I'm not in charge of a multi-million-dollar F1 team. So
and just looking at Dell's point, this is my point, Dell. Dell says, what's the incentive for back markers to sign young talent? They're not particularly likely to score points in a bad car. Big teams will sign them if good, all except top three should just sign pay drivers. This is the thing. I'm not questioning the incentives for young drivers or for teams to sign young drivers. I'm talking about Haas's ambition. Is their ambition to finish in and around 8th place in the Constructors? If it is, then Hülkenberg, yeah, fair enough, that's fine. But when they came into Formula One, they were talking about podiums and titles and wanting to challenge. So is that not the ambition anymore? Is the target just to be around 8th place every season if they can? Maybe 7th in a really great season, maybe have to suffer a 10th place here and there, or do they want to move forward? Because if they want to move forward and they have the ambition to win championships, at some point you've got to invest in a young driver. Or a younger driver, not we're not talking 19-year-olds. Why were Haas not chasing, for example, someone like a Pierre Gasly? He's not young, but he's only 26. He's someone you could build that team around for the next decade. That's what I'm talking about, the ambition of Haas. That's where my question is, really, is where are they going? Again, not specifically saying they should have got Gasly, but somebody like that. And that's kind of... I just don't understand where they're going, but that's probably because they don't really say where they're going, do they? They don't really talk a lot about the future. Alfa Romeo are talking this last few months have been talking about how next year will be the first year they're going to hit the cost cap, which is great news. They're then talking about how in the next few years, the partnership with Audi and where they're going to go with that and what that's going to mean for the future. Whereas Haas are just kind of like Ferrari engines, Dallara build the car, Hülkenberg. And you kind of go, cool, right. So what's the strategy here? If the strategy is to pick up some consistent points, somebody that can back up Magnussen with experience and nick you 7th place in the standings, bravo, you've nailed it. But is that it? Even Williams still talk about wanting to get back to the front, but we don't hear that from Haas, and that's what I don't understand. And it's fine. There are plenty of teams in Formula One history that have obviously wanted to win. Of course, Haas want to win races, but we don't hear it from them, what their goal is for the future. But there are plenty of teams in F1 that are perfectly fine, picking up a shock win here and there, being plucky in the midfield, punching above their weight. Jordan spring to mind, who are great teams who we all love. And if Haas want to be that team, wicked. But I'd just love to hear Gene Haas sit down over the winter at some point and say, right, this is where I want to be 5 years from now. Like Lawrence Stroll at Aston Martin, if you get what I'm saying. So it's not a dig at Hülkenberg. It's not even really a dig at Haas. It's just me not really knowing where they're going. That was a long way of saying, I don't know. But yeah. That's my stance to answer your point, Del. I hope you got all that down, Del.
I definitely think that says it all. I think I've said a few times on these streams that I've never quite understood who Haas are or what they want to be or what their deal is, and this kind of continues that kind of trend. And it definitely feels like they're just living for whichever season they're in, or maybe next season, just like consolidating their income and their ability to sort of vaguely perform. they almost got me with their when they were like building up to this year. They sacrificed everything to make things work for this year, and for a few races, that seemed pretty cool. It seemed like they were doing well and giving themselves a platform to build on, but they didn't build on it. So it just seems like they're sort of, I don't know, treading water. And you're right, they don't have the kind of gumption of a Jordan or a midfield team that's like, yeah, we're just the plucky midfield team who will occasionally punch above their weight and get stuck in and be scrappy and make our shoestring budget work, and occasionally do a sort of Sauber or a Jordan and get themselves mixed up in the top three for a bit. But yeah, they're a funny one. I mean, I'm glad they're still on the grid. I know they were, when they were having that really bad time, Gene Haas was like, I don't know if we want to stick around, to be honest. So I'm glad they're still here, but I would like to see them be more than that, be more than just sticking around. I want to know who they are as a personality. I want there to be a reason to be a Haas fan.
Yeah, because I think they could be a very likable team. They may well be. I mean, I know Tommy, who's been watching the channel since day one. I mean, he's a massive Haas fan, so there's a lot of love there. So he will completely disagree with what I'm saying, but I think there could be a lot of love there. They could be that really lovable team in the midfield. I just want to see more from them, because I feel like I'm not going to repeat myself. I've already said it, but thank you to M. Harati says, hope Mick finds a drive for 24. Thank you very much, mate, for your super chat. Massively appreciate that. That's very kind of you. It says, 24 for Mick. My feeling right now is if Zhou doesn't progress next year, or even if he does, I could see Audi sponsoring that seat and getting Mick in there, because they have said they would like a German driver for 2026. He's been heavily linked with that Mick Schumacher already. So a season at Mercedes potentially as reserve, and then Audi sponsor the seat for the next 2 years at Sauber. That's a lot of experience in that team that could potentially leave Audi in a very good position in 2026. So that's my super early 2024 driver lineup predictions pick. Mick Schumacher to Alfa, who will sponsor. Obviously, Audi can't necessarily have their name on the car because, Sauber, Ferrari, Audi is going to be a bit confusing, or whatever you'd call it, but they could sponsor that seat for Mick. It's just a thought.
It's a good thought. I like that. That's an interesting one. And and sensible. Not like rare, a crazy. Yeah. Well, watch this space. You can remember that you said that, so you can bring it up and gloat when it happens.
Yeah, and then if it doesn't happen, I'll forget about it. But Sujith as well, thank you very much for your second super chat, mate. It says, should F1 drop Jeddah and go to maybe the Dubai Autodrome? The Grand Prix layout is fantastic and fun, addictive in sim racing. Thank you very much for your super chat. I'll be honest, I've not seen the Dubai Autodrome layout, but was Jeddah? Because I know that we've got Qatar next year, and that was supposed to move away from Losail, wasn't it? That was going to be going somewhere else, but now it's staying there. Am I wrong? Was Jeddah supposed to be temporarily originally? Weren't they going to build another track? Am I getting muddled?
Yeah, I think Jeddah still is temporary, and they are building a more permanent, proper facility, but I believe they extended however long they were planning to stay at Jeddah from like 3 years to 5 years or something like that. I don't know the exact things, but I think we are there for a few more years. And Losail, I feel like we are now staying there for the foreseeable rather than it just be a longer temporary stay. But that's the last I kind of heard of that, because I think Losail went better than expected, because I think they weren't expecting it to be that great a race, but it was a sort of like last minute insert, wasn't it, in last year. So yeah, and I have raced the Dubai circuit in Project Cars, but I can't really remember it anymore. It was a while ago. Yeah.
And Nick says in chat, no way F1 drops Saudi anytime soon. I think for the long term, you can almost bank this as fact. Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Qatar when it arrives, and Abu Dhabi are probably on the calendar until they decide they don't want to be on it, which will probably be never. So they're going to be there forever. basically. So whether it'll be different circuits, we'll see. But I know a lot of people
Unless
don't like
money
Jeddah.
dries up, yeah.
Yeah, which, I mean, you never know. It might do. Look, Abu Dhabi was a good race today. I think, I'm just looking through the calendar now, Bahrain, I think as a circuit, I love Bahrain. I think it's a good track for Formula One. It works really, really nicely. Qatar, like you say, was good in 2020. Was it 2020?
2021, I think. It was last year.
Was it last year? Lots happened since last year. But yeah, no, I think it'll be, I think it's all right. I love Bahrain as a track. Gutted we're testing there again. I understand logistically that makes sense. Financially, potentially as well, but I don't want them to get... They've got a lot of data anyway. We've been coming to Bahrain for a long time, but I don't want them to get lots of testing data like I did for Spain, because that could spell problems. Potentially.
I think that the benefit, I think, of that over Spain is that they test in the day and they race in the night. So
yeah, true.
We've got different temperatures, both ambient and track. So it's a little bit different. But you're right. I think the high amount of testing we did at Barcelona really contributed to the duffer races there.
Jamie Santos in chat says, I've got to go. Cheers to the holidays to everybody. I wish you all a great time. And to you, F1 Word Chamber and Jonty, thank you for the great season and coverage. Cheers. Thank you very much, Jamie, for... I don't always read them on chat, mate, but I often look across at the chat box and have a bit of a giggle at some of the things you say. So thank you very much for your support this season, mate. Great to see you today. Hopefully see you before Christmas in a live stream. If not, have a great one. It feels weird to talk about Christmas, but it's not more than a month away, really, is it? It's about a month, well, just over a month away. Yes, a couple more questions then, and then we will wrap up today. See what we've got going on. I need to scroll back a little bit because people are talking about, yes, we have Qatar next year. I can't remember where I was on the calendar, actually, but I'll have a look at some points. I not see many questions on the race that we've missed, so that's okay. We will talk about Ferrari management in the winter. Definitely, we've talked about Hulkenberg. The only thing I would add is I think K-Mag's struggled in this back end of the year for one reason or another. Obviously not helped by being wiped out by Daniel Ricciardo last time, but if nothing else, he's always got that pole this year, which I still keep smiling about because it was a proper nice, feel-good Formula One moment. And yeah, I'll tell you what then. I can't see any questions that I'm willing to read out. Some of them are a bit cheeky, which we're going to kind of avoid that one. I've answered that one as well. Daniel on Lost Sale and maybe been a one-off, or we've answered that one. Brad says testing Canada, winter tyres. That could be fun. Chains. That could be a lot of fun. Could people talk about Las Vegas? Not for testing, but I'm looking forward to the spectacle of Vegas next year. I'm not sold on the track yet, but I'm not going to be one of these that gets all panicky about a layout until we've seen cars around it, because it could be brilliant. Mr. Random says Ferrari will be interesting next year. They were the most improved team this season with a strong but unreliable engine. Also, Simone Resta is coming back. Good point, actually. Ferrari were, look at where they were in 2020 versus this year. So second in the standings, in both standings, probably actually. They'll be very happy with that on reflection. Or maybe one of those, if you'd offered them that at the start of the year, they'd be happy, but that feels like something for another day, definitely. How do you think Sargent will do next year? Says Daniel Philpott. And Nick Surface says, will Pirelli ever sort out their wet tyres? Wet tyres, no. For some reason we have them. They're just there because they like to bring an extra set, I think. I think Logan Sargent will do very well next year. Tough against Alex Albon. But I think he'll do a good job. And last one from Shantanu says, do you think the 2022 car formula lived up to expectations? That does feel like a video or stream on its own, Stuart. Probably a bit of a long one, but in a kind of super quick wrap up. My feeling for this year is what I expected, actually. I thought we'd have the new regulations. A team would nail it. A team would probably dominate, and then you get Ferrari and Mercedes, or a Red Bull and Mercedes, or Ferrari and Red Bull who wouldn't quite have enough, and they'd battle it out for second and third. So that's kind of what I expected this year. But in terms of the effectiveness of the regulations, they have worked, according to the stats. Crofty pointing out, I think around 200 more overtakes this season. And I think when you see what we've seen in Abu Dhabi this year and what we've seen at some tracks where usually the racing's not great, we have seen cars able to get closer and race more closely, but it's not. A lot of people are angry it's not mixed the grid up, but I don't think it was ever going to happen this year. I never thought we'd see a big mixed up grid. This is about, from here on in, things will slowly close up. And if the longer they leave the regulations alone, the closer the field in theory will get. But I think as a first season, in terms of the on-track action, I think they have worked. I'd like to see more, of course, because I'm greedy. I think DRS has been too powerful at times this year, a little bit. But that's apparently going to get more powerful in the future because they're going to be able to open it from the end of the first lap or something like that, I think is on the cards for 2024. They're trialling it next year. But I think it's been a good first year for the regulations. Again, based on what we've seen on track, not looking at the championship tables necessarily.
Yeah, I definitely don't think, I think we were always suspecting a big change in regulations would shake up things a little bit, and to a certain extent it has, but that was never the point of the regulations, and I don't think it ever should be the point of regulations to just artificially shuffle everyone around, other than maybe giving an opportunity for everyone to start from scratch, and some of the lower teams that have fallen behind could just reset the playing field a little bit. But I think in terms of what they set out to achieve in terms of racing, definitely they've worked. I think the raw number of overtakes is one thing, but I think the key difference has been how close cars can stay to each other for a long period of time. We have seen cars being able to just chase each other lap after lap after lap, and maybe there isn't an overtake. Maybe the car in front is able to defend, but I think the point is that when we're watching them race, we always feel like an overtake is on the cards. It's a possibility. They don't have these sort of 2 laps of chasing and then have to give up because the tires are overheating, the car is overheating, then they have to drop back and then kind of just manage their tires for 10 laps and maybe think about having another go if they've still got life left in their tires. So that has definitely changed, whether or not it leads to overtaking or not. And what I'm hoping is that level of close racing continues next year and the year after, and they don't somehow develop their way around it, or if they do start to develop their way around it, that the FIA spot that happening and introduce rules to kind of just curtail that. Because I think we've all been a bit critical of sometimes the FIA stifles innovation, but I think if people are starting to introduce things again that dirty up the air or just do these things that made the racing more difficult, I think that's something that the FIA need to kind of keep an eye on. So I'm hoping we get more of this next year. And I think watching Abu Dhabi and circuits where it's been more difficult in particular has been a good demonstration of these rules working. So yeah, so I've been happy. I've been pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel like that's a nice way to round it off, to be honest. Yeah, not anything to add. So I'll say one last time in these reactions, Stuart, thank you so much for your company this afternoon. It's been great fun as always, chatting to you, and I keep saying it, but definitely as you get older, kids out there, definitely as you get older, time flipping flies. I can't believe this is over already. Despite it being a dominant season, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I still think we've seen some great racing and some great action. And although I am looking forward to a break in the winter, I'll soon miss all of this. So a couple of weeks and then I'll be pining for Bahrain in March.
Yeah. Yeah. But right now a rest is well needed. Thanks again for having me on these streams and today, and I'm sure we'll keep chatting with all our various projects and things in the winter time. But yeah, everyone go take a rest for however long it is until the next big race in some series that you watch.
Yeah, go outside. Apparently it exists. But yeah, thank you so much, Stuart. Not just for today, but this season. It's been a lot of fun and I really appreciate it. And it's always nice to waffle F1 with you, but I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers. Bye, everyone. Have a good Christmas.
Christmas. That's a scary thought, isn't it? Already there. Thank you so much to Stuart and to all of you guys as well for tuning in, not just today, but over the course of this season. It's been a real pleasure to waffle to you all after these Grand Prix. And as always, I appreciate your support. That is it for this one, though. I will be back this coming week with something on Sebastian Vettel, and I will be kicking off my end of season roundups as well very, very soon. There'll be one for each team. We'll work in reverse championship order like we do every year, starting with Williams, ending with Red Bull. So I can fill out my schedule now. I know where everybody is. So Williams first, all the way up to Red Bull, which will be just before New Year, which isn't that far away, as scary as that sounds. But once again, as I said in my preview, I said earlier in the video, or in this stream, difficult year for me, but you guys have helped me through it, and I really, really appreciate that. And I'm sorry that there wasn't more content and I wasn't more consistent, and I'm sorry that things weren't up to scratch for the channel, the level I'd set myself, and I'm sorry things didn't improve, but overall it's been a fantastic year, and without you guys I absolutely would not have got through it. Post races, not fantastic year personally, fantastic year with F1, but without you guys I definitely would have got through it. So thank you so much for your support. It means a hell of a lot more than I can ever put into words. Thank you to everyone, by the way, who's put super chats in this season in these streams, but especially to Charles Edward Cheese. You are an absolute legend, and I cannot thank you enough. So again, I'm rubbish with words, but I really do appreciate it, mate. So thank you so much. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for your interactions in chat as well. But that is it for the race reactions for 2022. The previews are done as well. Like I say, it's all going to be post-season and winter content now, which I'm looking forward to. It's a nice change from these things. And we will be live again in December, and I'm sure in January as well. And then before you know it, it's car launches, and then off we go again. So I know some of you do disappear now until March, which I totally understand, and that's absolutely fine. There's no problem with that whatsoever. So if I'm not going to see you again on videos and streams before March, then have a fantastic Christmas and a great new year. If you are going to be back on streams, though, we'll do something for Christmas this year. I don't know what it'll be yet. We'll have a bit of fun, and obviously lots of winter content as well. Follow me on social media. Links are in the description down below. I think if they're not, then at F1 Word, they're on the screen now. You can support the channel through Patreon. There's a GP box link down there as well. If you're looking for some Christmas presents, do go check that out. And clicking that link does also support the channel. So well worth a look. I've got some stuff ready to buy from there as well. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word in 2022. And until next time, goodbye.